What's up, y'all? It is Sojo. I'm hanging out here with Siran Stacy. An incredible day. How are you doing, sir?
So, Joe, I am doing awesome.
And we're in your home. We're in Nashville. This is
Yeah,
where you are
I,
at.
I live here in Franklin now,
How long you
and
been in Franklin?
well, I moved here in 2012,
2012.
and got married in 2013, and been here ever since. And it has really grown, on me.
Oh yeah,
And
I bet it has
yeah,
because you started with Birmingham, right? Well, it was Alabama.
I was living now in a city called Newton, Alabama. It's close to Dothan, Alabama,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's where my family. We had a home out there, and it was
come on.
L.A. We call it.
L.A.
Yeah, Lower Alabama.
Lower Alabama. Well,
Yeah,
for our listeners who do not know your full story,
yeah,
played for Alabama,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, University of Alabama, I should say.
Yes. Yeah.
A roll tide. So I gotta say it
Roll
just to
Tide.
show those people are
Roll Tide.
happy. You got the tie on for those who can't see,
Yeah.
and then also played for the Philadelphia Eagles. What was that like?
Oh, it was an honor. It
Really?
really was. I never dreamed about playing professional football.
Yeah.
I dreamed about playing at Alabama. That was a lifelong dream.
Yep.
And you know, it took me 12 years to get there. I got there when I was 20. Came from a junior college out in Coffeyville, Kansas, and left Alabama. Became an All-American, and was drafted by the Eagles in the second round. I was their first pick,
Wow.
and so, man, it was an honor. And
Okay, so for people who played maybe even college football
yeah,
but didn't have a chance to play professional,
oh,
what would you say is one of the biggest differences of college football to then now moving into professional football?
yeah. The biggest difference is the speed.
Really?
Yeah, you think that you see college football, Division One, and you like, man, it's fast, it's quick,
Yeah.
running backs, receivers making these, long touchdowns and stuff. But when you get into the league, the NFL,
The NFL.
everybody's fast. You got guys that are, 260 pounds linebackers
Golly.
running you down, and
Mm.
so you're supposed to be, and it's that game in the NFL. My coach told me my first year, he's like, it's played from the neck up.
Yep.
And so much of it is, catching the knowledge part of football, all the different nuances that are there, schemes. You just the physical part, the physicality is there.
Mhm.
But you got to know what you are doing
Gotta know what you're doing.
to really flourish as an NFL football player.
Well, you've kind of flourished with this message of change, and I
Yeah,
think as I'm looking at your story, going from college to professional and then life outside of football,
yeah,
which you had success in the mortgage world.
yeah,
But what was it like moving from the adrenaline and the
yeah,
excitement of playing sports into a more corporate setting?
yeah,
This is all before your ministry. We're gonna get to ministry in a
yeah,
second, but what
yeah,
was it like going from an athlete to corporate world?
yeah. Honestly, it was depressing. It, I'm the
Gotta be
building.
real, right?
Yeah, it was like, I would sit in the office some days,
Yep.
sitting there, dressed up, got a coat on, and looking around at my coworkers and having nothing in common with nobody,
Mhm.
and they're like whining and complaining about like simple things. And I'm coming from that football background that, where it is like, it's a grind,
High pressure,
yeah,
expectation.
it's physical, and you don't complain. You just go out. You gotta get it done.
You gotta get it done.
And so in the corporate world, it's the same principle. You got to get it done in the corporate world. You gotta, if you want to get ahead, you're gonna have to get there early, right?
Right.
You know,
But you don't
Er
have 60,000 people watching you and
yeah,
yelling if you miss one step. Yeah, that's
yeah,
the big
yeah.
difference.
And so yeah, and so the games, the competition against your opponent, the adrenaline rush, it's kind of gone now. It's different,
Mhm.
and so you have to adapt
Yep.
to that change.
Wow.
And so, and a lot of athletes, unfortunately, because all they have done is played football
Mm.
for like 25, 30 plus years,
Mhm.
and they get out, they cannot, they don't do the adaptation,
Yep.
they don't change, and they start searching for other adrenaline rushes. Unfortunately, it could be substance abuse, it could be alcohol, it could be, sexual,
Yeah.
in immoral acts. It could
I
just,
mean,
you hear these
oh,
stories.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you were gonna give a piece of advice for someone who is entering in whatever job they have right now,
Mhm.
maybe they're in a creative field, maybe they're in a corporate setting, and it doesn't go as planned,
Yeah.
as so many people have said in that
Mhm.
chair. Like,
Yeah.
I expected this,
You're right.
and then 5 years into it, God had other plans.
Yeah.
I then had to play catch up and figure out what those plans were. But the
Yeah.
reality is, I went kicking and screaming at some point in the journey. But
Yeah.
what would you say was something that you used to get past the kicking and screaming and finally be able to embrace, okay, I'm just in a new season and I
Yeah.
have to accept this?
Yeah. Well, I would do this, and I wasn't good at it initially. I would, while I'm in this season, in the National Football League or in whatever, field that you're in, I would prepare for the change.
That's good.
You have to prepare for the change. It's not gonna be there forever.
Yep.
NFL is like not for long.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
For that one time.
we had that saying, but you don't think about that.
Yep.
It's not for long. And I was doing prison ministry while I was doing this corporate, you know, you know, jobs, and on the weekend I would go into prisons, and what I would tell these inmates is they have to prepare for when they would get out while they were in
While they
prison,
were in.
because the recidivism rate was like 83%.
Mm.
Inmates get out, and then not long they're back in. And I was asking, praying about this. Why do that keep happening? Well, it's because there's no preparation. While they are there in prison, they're not preparing for what life is going to be when they get out.
Mhm.
And the majority of them, when they do get out, they go and do the same old thing that they were doing to get them there in the first place.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you always done what you've always do, you're always gonna be where you always been, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's great.
you have to change. You have to
Yep.
prepare.
Yep.
You have to prepare. Like, as a football player, like you playing in the National Football League, that's great. But prepare for life after football
Yeah.
while you are in football.
That's the mindset of understanding, like, I have to be proactive versus reactive to life and
Mhm.
understand that I'm not entitled to always, even me, if I'm brought in to speak, I'm not
Mhm.
guaranteed to come back and
Right.
again. So I have to prepare, make sure that I'm ready, and then I think about, okay, what do I have to do next? And I think
Mhm.
that is for a generation that's so busy looking around at what they don't have because they see it on social media.
Yes.
And so they're like, "Well, I'm just upset that my life isn't looking like this right here,"
Mhm.
versus saying, "Well, maybe every day you should just be preparing yourself versus
Mhm.
looking around at what this person has and what
Yeah.
this person you're
Yeah.
following." Like, prepare yourself, and God sees that. And
Yeah.
God is able to then bless you and say, "Okay, now you're ready for what I have prepared for you."
Mhm.
But if you haven't, then in the end, you're gonna have so much regret. You go from resentment of not getting what you want to
Yeah.
regret when you do get what you want, but you
Yeah.
haven't prepared,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
So, Joe, that's good. That's good.
Okay,
So
so
preach.
you just mentioned ministry, and I love that because we just talked
Yeah.
about your corporate world,
Yeah.
and I want to ask you about your story because it is,
Yeah.
if you haven't heard Saran's story, it is absolutely flooring.
Yeah.
But ministry is something that you were always interested in. Were you always in the church, or is it
Mhm.
something that you kind of were awakened to later on? And then what made you say, I want to start really doing more and being outspoken with my faith?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I wasn't, to answer the first question, no, I wasn't always aspiring to be in ministry. Um, I've always had this pull, even from a young age. I grew up in this little small town called Geneva, Alabama,
Yeah,
LA, right?
LA,
Oh,
little Alabama.
yeah. And, New Bethel AME Methodist Church. I grew up
Mm,
a Methodist, and I grew up, every Sunday you're going to go to church,
yeah,
rain, snow, sleet, hail, it don't matter. You're going to be in church.
yeah.
And there was, in those days, I remember this, our pastor preaching a hell fire and brimstone message. And I was like, I don't want to go to hell. You know, so I said I want to be saved.
Yeah.
And I grew up, in that type of environment, and so I had a relationship with God's word,
Hmm.
but I didn't, you could say, live out my, godly principles.
Yep.
And so I was a Christian, but I was kind of a, you call it, lukewarm Christian.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
I had this, like this thing that would come out of me early on, that I would like to help people.
Yep.
I would like to, just like the lesser guy, the
Mm.
guy, that, you know, all the odds were against
Yep.
him. I will always be cheering for that guy,
Mm.
and so as I grew up into, football and all, and just I would still keep that part of me there.
Yep.
Like, and we would do FCA.
Yeah.
I would lead like Bible studies many times. I would pray before games,
Yep.
guys would come around me, Saran, pray, and I would, I had that kind of pull.
Yeah.
And yet
You were a light before you even knew you were a light.
right. And I can give you this testimony in 2000, no, it wasn't 2000, thank goodness. In 1990, I was a senior in Alabama, and I was a Heisman Trophy candidate. I had this amazing first year of football. And I was on TV commercials, I was on magazines, and Mel Kiper had me as one of the top 5 running backs in the nation.
Wow.
And the first game, we were playing against Southern Miss, okay, University, and we go out, and like the first play or two that I was running the ball, I I had this pop in my knee,
Mm.
and I tore this ligament, and I just went down without nobody hitting me. And so I ended up taking me to the hospital. They say he's torn 3 ligaments.
Oh man.
So my anterior, my medial collateral, and my posterior. And they say his career is over. And see, he'll never play football again. And I remember as a senior, I'm just so like I was up here, in the penthouse. Now I'm in the outhouse. And I'm just like depressed. Like I can't believe this happened. I was going to be a Heisman candidate. I was all these things. So I bring this up because I'm in this room at Bryant Hall where the football players, basketball players stayed at that time. Paul Bryant, Hall. So and down at the third level, because you gotta walk up. It's 3 levels. I couldn't walk because my knee was in a cast, and it was, I was just
Mhm.
in a room by myself, and just like and then somebody hit a knock on the door, and I was like, "Come in, it's open." And this guy come in, this white guy comes in. He has a book in his hand, and he was like, "Saran, I'm so sorry." He says, "I know that." He says, "I know that you are hurting." And he goes on, and he's and he carries the conversation into God.
Oh wow.
He says, "Saran, I believe that God allowed this to happen for a reason." He said, "You got a chance to pull so many people to Jesus."
Mm.
He says, "Will you take that opportunity?" He says, "God is calling you." And I didn't know who this guy. I thought he was an FCA guy, but anyway, and I'm thinking like, you're telling me like, you know, God's calling me, and
It's a blessing.
I'm my career's over with. Nobody's coming to talk to me.
Yeah.
And and I was just like, I was 20 years old when that happened.
Mm.
So Joe, and I couldn't tell him, yes, I accept that call. And so he left. He said, but he said, Saran, before I leave, I'm gonna leave you this book.
Mm.
And he gave me this book. And I started reading this book, man. And the title of the book was How to Handle Adversity by Charles Stanley.
Mm.
And I remember reading that book in tears and just being so inspired by Dr. Stanley's message.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was at
Yep.
that time, but he was talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Why he was getting ready to go to Atlanta, leaving Florida,
Yep.
and so it just inspired me, and I ended up coming back, getting back on track, and and just getting into the National Football League, and Sojourner. I look for that guy.
Did you really?
I look for him just to tell him
Did you
thank you.
find him?
Never.
Never found him.
And so I went to all the FCA people, and I asked them, who was this guy? I described him. They said, we don't have anybody like that.
Nobody knows this man.
Nobody
And
knew.
yet he's such a pivotal part of your story.
Yeah. I never saw him again.
Never seen him
I
again.
really believe um, in my innermost being, I believe God sent an angel
Wow.
to me.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And that was 20 years old. And then so fast forward 20 years later, is when that horrific tragedy happened.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's a happy ever after. But then
Yeah.
for those who know your story,
Yeah.
you fall in love, have a family.
Yeah.
and then tragedy strikes,
Mhm.
unimaginable tragedy, and if you could share a little bit about that, because
Yeah.
this kinda leads us to this idea of surrender, and I think you're
Mhm.
so the credibility you have when talking about surrendering is
Yeah.
so established when you hear this story.
Yeah. Well, so you go fast forward after that, and I've uh, in that corporate world, and I modeled the National Football League, and I'm working, and I'm doing prison ministry on the side with Big Glass Prison Ministry, and I'm doing youth events. I'm speaking in high schools. I'm just doing it as volunteer,
Mhm.
not trying to be a speaker or a preacher, but I've heard people say like, "There's a calling on your life,"
Mhm.
and at that point, I had made so many mistakes, so Joe, and I was just like, I'm not qualified." I've had children out of wedlock. You know, in jail. I've been, just, I just, I'm not that candidate. And I never was a drug or alcohol, none of that type of stuff. But it was just poor
It
choices
was
that,
easy for you to see your imperfections.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
everyone else saw your potential.
yeah, yeah,
We all
yeah,
understand it. We all
yeah.
get that.
Yeah, and this one lady, Ellen Christina, her maiden name was Bible, Bible, and she just, we met each other back in '94, and I mean, she was just incredible.
Really.
Just she loved the Lord, and she had, given her life to Christ, and she was from Lafayette, Indiana, and she was like a breath of fresh air,
Mm.
because I all these other relationships I had been in with women, they were not good,
Stressful.
Yeah, it was stressful, but she was like, no, she was a virgin, and she was gonna do you know, she's like, I'm doing things the right
She
way,
knew who
and
she was.
yeah,
She knew
and I
her
was
worth.
just like, man, I didn't think women like this, you know,
Yeah.
so we started dating, and then she gets this prophetic word. She's like, "You're not done with the NFL." I said, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore." She's like, "You're not done."
Mm.
And so I got this opportunity to go play in what they call the World Football League, ultimately NFL Europe.
Okay.
And she was like, "You got to go." And I was like, "I don't want to leave you, but I took it. I went over to the NFL Europe and became like an MVP over there. And
Wow.
I mean, just great. And then end up signing when I got back with after I played over there a few years, I signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, and
Mhm.
then I finally, got out of football totally. And Ella and I are together, and we having children. We get married, and we are raising our children, and it's like I got a second chance, so Joe, to do things the right way.
Mm.
I'm not gonna have the marriage my parents had. She says I'm not gonna have the marriage that her parents had. And we was just like, dealing with stuff that, you could say sins of the father,
Right.
and just things that I grew up watching. But then ultimately I made my own choices too. So I'm not blaming my dad for my bad
Right.
mistakes. And so I
But you're awakening
yeah,
to your
yeah.
history and
And
sin
so
like
we were, man, 14 years we were together, and we had 3 children, and she loved my other
beautiful 3 beautiful children.
yeah, yeah, and she loved my other children that I had out of wedlock, and we were a family, and, it was gonna be the greatest Thanksgiving in 2007. We were living down there in Newton, and my mother was gonna have this great big, Thanksgiving reunion,
Mhm.
and all of my family was there. One of my brothers that was in prison for, like, 20 years, he was released,
Mhm.
and my oldest brother, Bruce, was coming home, and my sister that lives in Tampa, Angela, she was coming home, my other brother, Pat, and Latasha, all of us was gonna be home for the first time in, like, 20 years.
That's good.
And my mom was telling Ellen that night on November the 19th, she was like, "I want you to make those collard greens."
Mm.
'Cause Ellen, she had taught Ellen how to cook collard greens, and I love greens.
I do too.
Okay,
I do too.
so that night we were on our way back to our home. It was getting late, and then we stopped in Hartford, Alabama, and picked up Lucretia, my oldest daughter,
Mm.
and Sydney, my 9-year-old. And the 7 of us was driving, uh, maybe 15 miles to my house in Newton. And at an intersection, this individual that was twice the legal limit consumed with alcohol, uh, he had uh, he had contracted AIDS, and he was dying. He wasn't gonna live long. He
He was drinking
Yeah,
insanely.
yeah, he had hit, like, multiple vehicles before he made it to my vehicle.
Wow.
He was going up the wrong way. Let's say if you're traveling west, he's going east. It's 4 lanes,
Mm,
but he's getting the west. He just,
mm,
I mean, and so he was just angry. And well, when that light turned green, I went through it, and I was the car that
he smacked.
yeah, and he killed Ellen that night, and he killed my 18-year-old daughter Lucretia, and he killed my 10-year-old son Bronson. He killed my 9-year-old Sydney Marie,
Mm.
uh, and then my 2-year-old baby Ellie Ann Marie. Named after the two grandmothers. And
And you're in a coma,
yeah, I was in a coma for 10 days,
10
and
days. And when you finally come to, that's when you learn that your
yeah.
whole family.
Yeah, I was told, but I don't know if I learned it. Because they said the type of coma that I wouldn't remember anything that had happened.
Mhm.
And so when I come out of it, the first thing my dad and mom was above me, and people, let me tell you this, Sojourner, people prayed for me all over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I just want to thank them. Some
Mhm.
people that may be watching this, they knew when that time, they knew about it when that time happened, and they started praying for me. And Jesus has resurrected my life, but it also the prayers of so many people. Yeah,
So just to make sure we understand with
yeah.
the tragic accident,
Mm,
not everyone
mm.
was killed, right? There was some who was spared?
Shelly,
Shelly, and that's your daughter.
she's my daughter. She was 4 years old
She
at
was
the time,
4-year-old,
and myself.
and yourself.
Yeah, the rest.
So you and Shelly were able
Yeah,
to be spared on that.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I guess the first question I'd have for you
Mhm,
after coming out, because I think we see your strength now.
mhm,
But when it comes to the idea of holding on to your faith when something a tragedy like
mhm,
that strikes, what does
mhm,
that look like in your life? I
mhm.
mean, was it something you said I have no choice, or was it difficult to hold on to faith?
It was very difficult, extremely difficult, and it's a dark time
Mm,
for me. Um, Now, Shelly was, I still had Shelly,
here we go.
and so I was trying to, navigate in how I would, you know, take care of her. What was life going to be like? Um, I had other childrens too, and
Mhm,
and I was, but and so in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how to make it, and
mhm.
at the same time, um, the depression, the guilt, the blame,
Absolutely.
uh, it's bombarded me, and so I didn't have a whole lot of faith. I just I just hung on, Sojourn. I just hung on,
Mhm,
and people were saying stuff, and it's like a surreal moment. Those first like 6 months or so, it's just surreal.
mhm. Everything you
Yeah,
know is
yeah,
gone,
and
changed.
I'm trying to live because. And then physically, I'm like, got 5 life-sustaining injuries myself. They said, nobody should have survived, but I had a broken, you know, ribs,
Mhm.
I had a punctured lungs, my liver was bleeding, my skull was cracked,
Wow.
um, and so I was laid up for months, you know
Was
you know
there a definitive moment you would have where you say, I was in a dark place, and it was when this happened that
Mhm.
I started to finally find the light again, or did you just have to crawl yourself out of that, claw your way out of that and through time and
Yeah,
determination to finally reach the next chapter, the next season? Because,
yeah.
I mean, I'd imagine there's some people who are like, I would have just surrendered to the
Mhm.
darkness, and there's a piece of you that had to say, "I gotta keep going."
Mhm.
Maybe there's more ahead, maybe there's not more ahead. I
Yeah,
mean, take us into that.
yeah. That's a good question, because suicide was an option for me. It,
Um,
it was,
wow.
and so I didn't. It's because it was this pain that was relentless, and it was literally gnaw my flesh. Uh, and I was speaking this morning about the first king of Israel, this King Saul, and how the Bible talks about you know, there was a certain moment that he had come to that these evil spirits were tormenting him.
Yeah.
And I when I read that, I knew I knew what this word was saying. And because, It could be like you and I. Well, we're talking with, and then this was June 4th. It comes around, and it's Ellie's, my youngest daughter's birthday,
Mhm.
and it's something would just come over me, Sojourner.
Mm.
I mean, to the degree that I couldn't breathe,
Mm.
and I was just, and it was
Mhm.
like, you just want to give up. And I
Yeah.
got so close to giving up that night, June 4th, and but by God's grace, he prevailed.
Mhm.
His spirit prevailed, and
And for those who don't know, you
yeah,
you have a beautiful family now.
yeah,
Absolutely beautiful
yeah,
family, and so, tell us how that happened.
yeah,
Am I good for
yeah.
you on that?
It's another miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that that I survived, and Shelly survived.
Mhm.
We're in our right minds.
How old is she now?
Shelly's 22.
22 now,
Yeah,
okay. Come
Shelly,
on. Just finished school, you said?
she just graduated at Liberty University,
Incredible.
and she's a miracle.
Mhm.
And so in 2012, I moved up here to Nashville by faith, and I wasn't looking to get married again, or even I was done, with this whole women thing,
Mhm.
and at that time in my life, it was ministry.
Yeah.
2008, I made up my mind that I was going to go full-time ministry,
Mhm.
and didn't know how that was going to shape out of work. And I got tutored by an individual by the name of Dr. Charles Lewis out of Dothan Community Church in Dothan, Alabama. And he just, man, he poured into me,
Mm.
and I was, sent out, and I just started, traveling and speaking and evangelizing, and getting closer to the Lord. And I saw like a revolutionary like moment happen. I'm talking about a genuine metamorphosis moment in my life. Well, unequivocally, I know the Holy Spirit was in me.
Mhm.
I know Jesus is in me, and it's like, and so I become brave. I became bold. I didn't go to like seminary. I didn't go to a Bible college, but it, it's like it didn't matter.
Mhm.
Those qualifications are great, and I would advise anyone that's going into ministry to go that route. But yet, all of us don't get to go that route. Some the Holy Spirit chooses now, right now. And so, yes, and so there I was, just and so I was up here, and I met this girl. I was It was a speaking engagement. I was speaking at a place called Wild Horse Saloon.
Okay.
Yeah, 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 downtown Nashville, speaking to a bunch of CFOs.
Yeah.
And afterwards, one of them comes up to me and was like, he was Indian. He's not even a believer. He was like, "Mr. Stacy, your presentation was excellent." And he says, "I asked you to come and run with us in the Saturday morning running group."
Mm.
I said, "What?" And he's like, he wanted me to come run, have this running group every Saturday morning. I was like, because my message was about running a Fortune 500 companies. It's,
Mhm.
it's like a run.
Mhm.
Are you in? And I said, "Oh, that was just a motivation." I didn't really want to go
Running on a mile run.
Yeah, no, he went 7 miles. Yeah.
Ooh-wee.
So yeah. So I was like, I'm not doing. I'm 245 pounds. I'm not.
Yeah.
And he was persistent.
Okay.
And so he ended up, and I'm kind of a people person. I said,
Mhm.
okay, I'll do it. And so there I was. I stayed the night up here. I wasn't living up here at the time, but I stayed the night. And then the next morning, I show up at Crockett Park, and all these skinny people, they want to run 7 miles,
7 miles.
and I'm in the back of the line. And I'm like, dude, you are so stupid.
What are we doing?
Yeah. And then this girl goes like, she said, "So you was the speaker yesterday?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "And you gonna play for Alabama?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then she's like, "Well, I said, "Listen, I can't run and talk like y'all people.
I gotta
I just
focus.
gotta get through this." But that girl ended up becoming my wife.
Oh, yeah.
That's how we met.
Mhm.
It was something I was looking for, but something happened on that 7 mile run
Mm.
that moved my heart. It was just like the two guys that was walking, the Emmaus walk. And they was like, they was walking with Jesus, but they didn't. Then they said, "Didn't our heart burn?" When there was something happened in my heart where Ellen, I'm not Ellen, but Ellen was my first wife, but Jeannie and I were
Yeah.
running. There was something. I was like, I didn't know what it,
I know what it
so
was.
that started a new, pursuit, and I pursued her, and we got married, and I started having children again. I was 40 something years old, and I'm having like these,
Beautiful children.
yeah, I have a 10-year-old and a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, all girls, and Shelly and Jeannie, they mom and daughter, their relationship is so close,
Mhm.
and it's like, people say, "Well, you're a modern day Job," I
Yeah.
said, "Well, Job was, perfect and upright and fear God, and he withdrew from evil. I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't upright, and and I didn't run from evil. I ran into evil,
Saran,
Yeah. So
if
yeah,
you had to say,
yeah,
as we're landing this plane, if you had to tell the people,
yeah,
how to continue to surrender to God through the
mm,
good and then through the darkest moments you
yeah,
can't even imagine,
yeah,
what would be the thought that you would leave this crowd with? Because I feel like that's why people think surrender with you, because you truly are saying, listen, this surrender is, it can look much different than the way you think it does,
yeah.
but you still must surrender.
You have to surrender.
And so what would
Absolutely.
you say to this audience?
Well, I would say tell God the truth. I
Mm,
mean, with your voice. Don't keep it bottled in. Tell him the truth, no matter what it is. He already knows it.
yeah.
But too many of us, we deny or we
Mhm,
suppress.
mhm.
David says in Psalm 142, he cried out to the Lord with his voice.
Yes.
He told God everything. And I'm tell you something, I did that,
Mm,
and I'm saying that because I did it.
yeah.
I had a moment with him that I was just, I screamed at him. I didn't
I've had those
understand.
moments.
Yeah,
I've had those moments where
yeah,
it's like, "Okay, we gotta have a real
yeah,
talk. I'm
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
scared or I'm
yeah,
angry."
yeah,
And he
yeah.
can handle it.
He can handle it,
He can handle any of it.
and I can't.
He made anger. He
Right,
made it
right,
that he knows these emotions. He's
right,
not
right,
afraid of our emotions.
right. And so that was all I will leave to the listeners. Tell him the truth and watch him, because David said something happened in his spirit.
Mhm,
We are spiritual beings living in this little clay body for a season,
mhm.
and so we must open up our spirit to Him. We must not play games and play church or wear these masks, and we're not going to get changed that way.
Mhm,
What's change is going to come when we open up our spirit, and that's what I did. I became vulnerable.
mhm.
And then he taught me, he started teaching me to, this is the message that I'm going to use you with. I'm going to sing you places, and
Right.
you're not going to worry about who's in the room. You're not going to try to get the appeasement of man.
Mhm,
You're going to seek to please me.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for remaining open to continuing to learn what God is
Yeah.
teaching you and then taking the time today to come and teach this community of
Yeah.
people. I know that there was a massive line of people just wanting to share their gratitude and probably their stories with you.
Yeah.
Your testimony truly resonates with so many people. If they wanted to stay connected with you or
Yeah.
maybe even reach out to you, what's a way
Yeah.
they could do that?
Yeah. You could just go to my website, SiranStacy.org. Yeah.
SirenStacy.org is
Yeah.
a way to get connected.
Yeah. Send me a message or so, and I'll respond back.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time with us today. You
Thank
have truly, truly won the hearts of so many people.
thank you, brother.
All right.
Yeah.